Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2021 Sustainability Awards. My name is Mike Riley. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Center. I use he, him pronouns, and we are thrilled to bring you this event tonight. Sorry that we're not in person, but we're thrilled to be able to bring it to you live. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. The Environmental Center's mission is to embed sustainability into daily life in Central Oregon. Tonight, we celebrate the change makers in our community who are helping us achieve our mission. We believe it's important to tell the stories and celebrate the people and organizations in our community that are making a difference. Despite whatever obstacles they face, competitive industry pressures, pandemics, recessions, and real headwinds as they ride their bikes across town, these locals keep pushing forward. They want a healthy environment. They work hard to build a vibrant, economically successful organization and community. They're concerned about those in need and creating a more inclusive and just society. They know that public policy plays an important role in shaping the future, and they're translating all of these values into action. They're showing us what's possible by making sustainability real here in Central Oregon. And I think it's important to reflect a little bit on why the Sustainability Awards are so important today. I think as many of you probably know, we just had a large group of world leaders convene in Glasgow, and now all the people who work for them are going to continue to work for a couple more weeks, trying to come to some agreement about what we should do about climate change. The science is telling us we have about 11 years left to really make a big difference. Otherwise, we face some of the worst possible outcomes and scenarios for climate change. So we think it's really important that we pay attention to the creative, innovative, and risk-taking individuals, businesses, government agencies, and nonprofits that are going to show us the way and actually get us to a future that's low carbon and resilient. Our work today is also the foundation for the youth to build on for tomorrow, and we're excited that tonight, as a new part of this event, we're going to hear from some youth in our community about their vision on the future of sustainability. So before we get started, just a quick overview of tonight's event. I'm going to do a few thank yous right here to get us started. We're going to then transition to the youth panel discussion, and then finally we're going to give out the awards, and you're going to get to see the beautiful awards that we have for this year's event. We are going to take a brief intermission after the youth panel as well. So the first couple of thank yous. First, to our sponsors. Our lead sponsor this year is Strictly Organic Coffee Company. They've been serving great coffee in Central Oregon for 25 years or so. I feel like I've grown up with them here in Central Oregon as one of my go-to places and one of my go-to sustainable businesses. Our other sponsors include Cascade Financial Strategies and OSU Cascades, as well as Capstone CPAs, Central Oregon Radiology, the City of Bend, Central Oregon Association of Realtors, the Energy Trust of Oregon, and Miller Lumber. And then our media sponsors this year include The Source Weekly, Bend Radio Group 92.9 FM, Cascade Business News, and The Bulletin. The other thank you I want to make tonight is to two important staff members who've made this event happen. In particular, Priscilla Calleros. This is the first time that she's actually finally done a Sustainability Awards for us, and she's done a great job pulling it off and helping us pivot to this whole new way of doing things. And then Lauren Williams has been her right-hand woman, supporting her in the background as well. So we're going to transition now to the youth panel. Like I said, we're very excited to have this new addition to our event this year. A panel of local youth are going to talk to us about their vision for the future of sustainability. There's so much work to be done to create a just future that is good for people and the planet. And we think today's youth will be essential to helping us get there, as they are tomorrow's leaders. So we're really excited to listen to them, and learn from them tonight. The panel is going to be moderated by Ben Ward. Ben is a student at OSU Cascades in the Natural Resources Department. He currently works as a seasonal field biologist, specializing in avian and bat surveys. Ben has worked as an environmental consultant and outdoor educator at projects and locations across the country. Ben enjoys connecting with people and the landscape and contemplating our ecological paradigm. You can find him angling, climbing, birding, or sitting on a rock writing a poem. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ben, to run the youth panel, and thanks to you and all the youth for being here tonight.
All right, thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here with each of our wonderful young panelists. And before we introduce them, we'll just cover a couple housekeeping items. We'll spend about 45 minutes getting to know them and how they view issues in the future of sustainability. We'll have about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes for a Q&A session. So if you have questions, you viewers out there who are watching on YouTube, you can leave comments in the comment bar, and we'll make sure to get those questions and answer those as best we can. And after that, we'll hear a final hear some final thoughts from each one of our panelists, and then we'll break for intermission. So, without further ado, we'll get started here introducing each one of these people. And Ella, you're first.
Hi, my name is Ella Hayden. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. What got me interested in sustainability is I've just grown up feeling the urgency. I think it's really important to do your individual part and do your part as a collective. And I'm excited to have a discussion tonight.
My name is Olive Nye. I use she, her pronouns. I'm 17 and I'm a junior at Bend High School. I first started learning about sustainability actually in my middle school science class. And then from there, I joined my middle school green team and started becoming involved in activism and advocacy work. So kind of started from me, from being informed and being educated in school about these issues. And then I kind of formed passion out of that education.
Hi, my name is Harper Smith. I recently graduated high school this past spring. And what got me into sustainability was really, I was born and raised here in Bend. I'm a unicorn, I know. And that, I feel like we have a huge culture here, acknowledging the land we live on and preserving it. And so that led me to take classes as Olive did at school, which has led me to choose sustainability as my career.
Great. And so first we want to just talk about, just go over how we're thinking about sustainability, which is based on the three pillars of sustainability are economic, environmental, and social well-being. So throughout our discussion, we're going to try to make sure and highlight and give equal footing to each one of those pillars. And so often the environmental aspects of our culture and society get brought up, but that's just one part of a holistic view of sustainability in our culture and society. So that is an easy transition into our first question for our panel and this is a question from one of our registrants, early registrants. How do the environment, economy, and social well-being tie into sustainability? How do you view that in our community now?
Yeah, I think a good analogy to think of is almost like a tripod stool or a table. You have three legs, right? And if you remove one of those legs, your table or stool is no longer going to stand. They're just that intrinsically interwoven. And an example I'd like to bring up for this is the extreme gender inequality right now between particularly women and white men. So first starting, obviously that's a social issue. And then going into economics, we have the gender pay gap, which is obviously talked about a lot. And then into environmentalism, which we don't always hear about on this topic, I'd like to bring a point from the United Nations. They released a study that said that 80% of those displaced by the climate were women. So women are disproportionately being impacted by climate change. And so that kind of shows you really cannot deal with one of these legs without dealing with the other two, if that answers your question.
Kind of adding on to what Harper said about the disproportionate effects, I think growing up, sustainability for me was always about the earth, and it was about nature, and it was about animals and plants. And then I think as I've gotten older, I started understanding kind of what Harper said, that these ideas are all connected. And I think something that's really important to remember when we're talking about sustainability is that this is a complex issue. There is not one solution, and the solutions that we have are not going to work for everyone. And I think it's important that we look at each group and how they are affected by climate change and other environmental issues, and then from there find the best solutions. And we know that climate change disproportionately affects different communities, different races, different ethnicities, and I think it's very important to consider social justice and racial justice when we're also looking at climate justice, because these issues all connect.
Yeah, and I think you know what the whole view of tonight is sustainable businesses here in Bend, and all three of those pillars have a lot to do with not only the businesses but with the consumers, and what it means to shop sustainably, what it means to have a sustainable business is not only affecting the environment, but you know, who are you providing those products to, who's buying the products, and that's all tying into the economy.
And Harper, kind of going off of what you said, how, in regard to reaching out to those who are left out of the equation, how might each of you consider reaching out to those who are without?
One thing I think is really important is giving a platform to those voices that are underrepresented. I think often the voices around sustainability and what we should do for the environment kind of come from those majority voices, and those people that are prevalent and are speaking about it may not be the ones that are actually affected by it. And so I think it's important that those people of the majority are giving platforms and letting those people of minority have a voice and be able to explain, you know, their fears about the climate and what's happening to them and how it's going to affect them, and then what solution works best for them. Because like I mentioned before, it's going to be different for everyone. It looks different for every person, every region, and I think it's important that we consider, you know, the specification in each aspect of this and approach it what's best for those different groups.
Yeah, and then adding on to that, I also feel like there is a universal topic that can be applied to all different demographics, and that is education. I was asking myself when I was preparing for this panel, why aren't sustainability and environmental sciences classes on the same level as, say, math or biology? If this is the crisis that we're facing with very few years, we need to have that at a similar importance in our schools, because that's how all of us got our start, and that's why all of us are on this panel today. So we really need to be pushing that we're educating everyone on the importance of climate and sustainability on the social and economic levels.
Yeah, and I think going off of education is they need to be put at a similar level of importance, and also just brought into our everyday lives and incorporating it into, you know, all kinds of classes in schools from a very young age, because it can be tied into everything, and even in our day-to-day conversations, because sustainability is something that should be accessible to everyone. It should be just their part of our everyday lives, and it needs to be talked about. So I think the more accessible we can make it is better.
One thing I want to add on to what Ella just said, in preparing for this panel, we kind of talked about, you know, how sustainable goods tend to be more expensive and they're harder to access, and how a lot of people, it's kind of a privilege for people to worry about sustainability, right? If you have the money and you have the time to shop sustainably, to live more sustainably. So I think one of the things we need to look at is making those things, like Ella said, more accessible and more efficient and cheaper for those people who don't have the privilege of worrying about it and don't, you know, have the money to go buy a sustainable product. We have to find ways to make those products cheaper and more accessible to them, and basically make living sustainably more efficient for everyone.
So on that note then, how would you propose compelling businesses or communities to make products, goods, and services more affordable for people who might not have had the access or know that that's something that's available to them?
Yeah, like what Olive said, is it shouldn't have to be like a moral obligation that you're choosing to shop sustainably. It should be the easier choice because you care about what we're doing for sustainability. I think to make it more accessible, it needs to start at a corporate higher level, because a lot of the times, like what Olive is saying, is it's a privilege a lot of the times to make that choice, and it shouldn't have to be a choice. It should just be what we're doing. So I think it needs to start at a higher level, not just local and by the person. It needs to be a collective from higher up.
Yeah, going off of what Ella said, we need to, as consumers, recognize our power. You know, I'm sure you've all have heard of voting with your dollar. What you spend money on, the companies are listening to that, and they recognize when you spend money and when they don't, because that's how their businesses, you know, continue to remain. So when we can choose what we're buying, when we do have those resources, to really make sure that we are making our voices heard in that way, it's a really powerful tool, and we've seen a lot of positive change come from it in the past.
Kind of combining those two ideas, I think it's about systematic change, and I think it's about the infrastructure that we can create so it is easier and more accessible for people to live sustainably. But kind of like what Harper just mentioned, if corporate businesses aren't going to make that push on their own, and the higher ups are not going to make that push on their own, we have to find a way to pressure them and let them know that us as voters and voting with our dollar, we care about climate change, we care about these issues, and that is something we're going to be factoring into all of our decisions. And so I think, you know, if we can make our voices heard and put that pressure on those corporate businesses and, you know, the higher ups, I think that's something that's really important.
Great. One of the registrant questions is, how are you as younger people thinking about this sustainability movement that we've been discussing? How are you thinking about that differently than people from an older generation or older generations?
Again, preparing for this, one of the things we've kind of just been chatting about as a group is the difference in the sense of urgency with our generation. Kind of like what Mike introduced, this is a time issue for us, and it has become a lot more real for our generation. I think our parents and our grandparents, you know, climate change and its effects was more an idea of the future, whereas now we are being affected. Climate change is happening now. We are seeing the effects everywhere. And so I think it's just become a lot more real in our eyes. And I think that our generation has grasped that sense of urgency in a different way. And we've been very passionate about taking action because we want to have a future and we want to live in a sustainable world. And we understand that it is partly our responsibility to create that future for ourselves.
One thing we were talking about actually before this panel that makes it a lot different than other generations, and like what Olive said, is just the urgency. I've talked to many people my age who say that they don't even want to have kids because they don't want to bring them into a world that they know is going to be so like detrimental and, you know, dangerous because of the climate issues, which it does affect our daily lives more than it did to other generations when they were growing up. And we've had to face this reality from a very young age. And we talked about, like, very early on seeing the videos of, like, the polar bears and the ice caps melting and that really being kind of traumatic and wanting to have that change from a very young age. So I think just the way that we've grown up and the way that we see it, and we just want to make that change that other generations maybe didn't have that same urgency.
Yeah, and another generational difference we should be considering is the technology. Not only do we understand what we're up against way more than we did in the past, but we also have a lot of technology at our disposal. I could post something on Instagram today and it could get 1 million views. That is technology we've never had before. And so we are all influenced by that, we're all experiencing that, and action builds on action. By talking about it so much more, we're all realizing how much of an import it is that we actually do something. And that's what's leading, for instance, if I bring up the Met Gala, Billie Eilish got Oscar de la Renta to stop using real animal fur by wearing one of her dresses. And I'm sure that social media had something to do with that.
One more thing adding on to this idea about our generation, I think from a scientific perspective, we know more about climate change than we did when our parents were growing up, when our grandparents were growing up. We're more educated and we're more informed on the issue. I think we have a better understanding, and I think, like we kind of talked about learning about it in our classes, that education and what we've learned from science is just different. And I also think as a social issue, climate change has become more accepted to talk about, and our generation has kind of established this as a basis that this is something we want to talk about and we will talk about. And I think that change has been really impactful just as it's become more socially accepted among our generation and something that's become more factual for us rather than kind of a debate or something that was up in the air. We know that these effects are happening, and so we've decided to take action.
Are there things that you have conversations, or what do some of those conversations look like with your peers when it comes to climate change or social issues or economic issues? Is there anything specific that comes to mind when you think about your conversations and how you want to move forward as a peer group?
Yeah, I think a lot of my conversations have just been about empowering other people my age, and just providing examples about how they can, even though they're only 18 or 17 or 16, still be making a difference. For instance, as soon as you turn 18, you can start legally investing in the stock market. And with new technology and micro-investing, you can start investing in green companies for only $1. And that is a huge component of economic sustainability that isn't talked about a lot. But in my conversations, I'm trying to bring to the forefront just how much one person can do.
I think another thing, like with their generation, and when I talk to my peers, is we have so much information at our fingertips that we can find at any moment, just in our cell phones. So I think, like when we talk about change we want to see, it's so easy to educate ourselves about that change and find out how we can make a difference. And even the amount of resources to become involved in sustainability is like incredible. I know there's so many organizations locally, in Oregon, nationally, that you can get involved in as a youth to like make that change you want to see, whether that be with the climate or racial justice or anything. People are just connecting, and there's ways to do that. There's ways to create your own clubs or activities to see that change.
So moving off of that, Ella, for each one of you, just wondering, here in Bend and in Central Oregon, what are things that we as a community can be doing to combat an issue as big as climate change?
One thing that comes to mind for me that is unique to Bend is how fast the city is growing. One of the fastest growing cities in the country, and I think it's really important that we consider what that's going to look like in the future. And I think that we, need to think about accommodating the moving population here and the immigration that's happening. And I think it's really important to think about how we can plan sustainably. And look at things like urban growth boundary and how we're transporting people, public transportation, how are people getting to where they need to be every day, and how do we make sure that every person here gets to where they need to be, because that's also an equity issue of making sure everybody has accessibility to that type of transportation. So I think planning for the future growth of Bend is something that we could do here in this city that could be really impactful, because if we can make a change in Bend, it can inspire other cities and states to do the same, and that equates to bigger change.
This is one thing we talked about earlier a little bit with just how sustainability affects different groups. But I'm from Redmond, and the privilege and wealth level just between Bend and Redmond is astronomical. And I think when we talk about a community, we need to think about all the different populations and groups within that community, and talk about how different it is and how easy it is for some people to make those sustainable choices, or use public transportation or the public transportation options in different places. And there's a lot of big differences between Bend and Redmond, or even Prineville or Sisters, just those different groups. And I think we need to talk about a community on a bigger level than just in the town or your close group.
Yeah, and then one more thing I think we could address is consumerism in Bend, and I know this does apply to a very specific demographic, but I see a lot of conspicuous consumerism in Bend, and that needs to be shifting to conscious consumerism. Instead of throwing our money at the next best, greatest thing, even if it's more environmentally friendly than the one we have, we need to remember that the most sustainable product is the one we already own. And so, like I said, voting with our dollar, telling the companies that we need more eco-friendly products, products that aren't made by someone who's paid horrible wages, and third, that are going to last a while. We really need to stop this planned obsolescence where products are designed to give out on us within a certain time frame. We should be buying products as an investment for the next 20 years. And that is a huge economic sustainability aspect that I think can also be applied to demographics without as much income, because if you are investing in this one small thing, maybe it's you buy plastic Tupperware instead of using a Ziploc bag. Like, even those small things, they all add up.
Great. So I want to pivot a little bit to talking about some of our communities that within Central Oregon and Deschutes County, we have a pretty different, depending on where you live, there might be a collective understanding of how things should go that is different. So, and that this was an issue that our panelists had described as being significant. So how do you view how would you suggest that we build bridges between those who have maybe disparate views from us, or make inroads into helping others see the value in pushing for a sustainable future?
I think a big way to kind of bridge that gap and make connections with people is, like what I said earlier, is just bringing in the discussion of sustainability into every conversation. And it doesn't need to be this big thing where you feel like you're arguing with the other person about why aren't you doing these things, and you need to be doing these things to help our planet. It should just be a discussion where you can bring it up, talk about it, and make that other person realize, like, wow, there are some changes I could be making, and make connections to their own life, make it relatable, where they realize, you're right, there's a lot of stuff happening. Because a lot of times if we come at it where we feel like the other person's wrong automatically, that person's not going to want to have that discussion. So I think the biggest way to bridge those gaps is just make it relatable, talk about it in every way you can, just to normalize it.
Kind of adding on, as a group, we've talked about the idea of imperfect activism, which is something some of you might be familiar with. But kind of what Ella said, the idea that it's not about putting down people for what they're not doing, but congratulating what they are doing and then helping them improve. And I also think it's important that we understand that sustainability needs to be something that can benefit every group, right? It can't just be the group that's passionate about it or the only ones working on it and the only ones benefiting. We have to find a way to make sustainability, equitable and beneficial for all groups of people. And I think we really have to meet in the middle. I think it can be hard, when you're trying to push your agenda and push your ideas, and then people end up backing away from that. So I think finding a way to work together in the middle, where both groups can share their ideas and then figure out what works. I think that's the best way to approach it, kind of that collaborative mindset, and then also, encouraging people to do what they can do instead of looking down on them for what they're not able to do.
Yeah, adding right on to what Olive was talking about, no one is perfect, and we all have to just accept that and just know that even if all you do is sign up for the newsletter from your local environmental center, you are still making yourself open to that messaging, and that psychologically will change how you view things and how you act in the future. It will make you more sustainable.
Yeah, one more thing onto that is just being aware is a huge first step, because as soon as you acknowledge that what's happening is happening, you're just going to start subconsciously making choices that are going to help you and the planet. It's just being aware socially, economically, and environmentally.
And one thing that we talked about yesterday was complacency, and we've kind of hit on this a little bit, complacency and maybe even greenwashing, and how we consume and how we act or don't act within our communities. So within the realm of Central Oregon, how do you combat that complacency where people might feel like they're doing something when there's really much more that they can be involved with?
One thing about Bend, it's a very active community and a very outdoor-based community, and with that, I think there can be a lot of greenwashing phenomenons where it's like, oh, I go hiking and this is sustainable, right? And I think the most important part of that is education and informing yourself, because it's easy to put a green label on something and put a leaf on something and make it appear sustainable and do that with an action or an activity and say that one thing is sustainable. But I think it's important that everyone informs themselves and tries to understand what really is sustainable, because if you can understand that, then you can make better decisions and more sustainable decisions, and then not contribute to that complacency phenomenon where there's, things of greenwashing and other things that may seem sustainable but really aren't. So I think that comes with education, and not just educating yourself, but finding ways to educate others and spread awareness, and creating infrastructure and programs to educate those people that can't take it upon themselves to educate themselves.
Yeah, and then what Ben was saying about complacency, I feel it very strongly that sustainability is not ever something we will be able to perfectly achieve. It is always a goal that we will and should be working for, but we will never achieve perfection. It's akin to utopia, So no matter what you're doing or no matter how much effort you're putting into sustainability, please recognize that you can always do more. Never be complacent in that, and always look for potential to better your lifestyle.
Going off like the concept of greenwashing, that shows up so often. I think when you hear that, you think just products that may be, are made of recyclable materials, but you have to think about how it's being made, what company it's coming from, and all those before and after steps, not just what the package says, because it's always a lot more than that. But also, greenwashing comes a lot in activities like what Olive said, like hiking, that you think you're doing so much like in that way, but it's a lot deeper level than just what you're buying. There's a lot of deep levels into that greenwashing.
One more thing, I think it's very important, along with the education piece, to think critically. And I think about the plastic straw movement, which, if you're not familiar, was a movement kind of started, I think, online through social media, looking at plastic straws and the impact those have on the environment, specifically marine life. And a lot of people, took this, and then they would have their plastic cup and their plastic lid, but they had a reusable straw, which I completely think that's a great step. We're eliminating one piece, but I think it's important to consider what's behind this movement, right? The idea is to reduce plastic pollution. So maybe I could get a reusable cup, with a metal lid and a metal cup and then a metal straw, and then I'd be reducing even more. Because I think sometimes the general population tends to just take in, oh, this says that I need a reusable straw, and if I do this, I'm sustainable. And I would challenge everyone to think critically about those and think, what is the message behind this, what impact this is having, and how could I adapt this to make it have more of an impact?
Yeah, and so related to the question of complacency, what have been, for one, each one of you is already here, so you're already involved in an aspect of moving our community into the future and further in positive ways, but what have been some of your own really meaningful involvement opportunities that you've been able to take part in?
Yeah, I think I can pinpoint when I was first interested in environmental science. When in 6th grade, with my homeschool group, I went to the Deschutes River with the Deschutes Watershed Council, and we counted organisms within the water to try to measure the health of the river. And I loved that because it was sorting, and I have such an analytical mind, like that made my day. But it was just so rewarding to actually see how I could make an impact. And yeah, honestly, I think I can pinpoint this entire experience to that one day.
My kind of first experience with the advocacy piece of this was in middle school, and the green team there, we presented at city council talking about the plastic bag ban. And I remember staying outside, in the hallway till 9, 10 at night as the council was going on. And after the ban was passed, and it was just this really exciting moment. I mean, we were in 8th grade, 6th grade, whatnot, and people, weeks after were like, hey, I think you guys really had an impact on that passing. It was really important to have those youth voices there. And that was so powerful to have that and see that you really could make a change. And it didn't take a ton of preparation, but we were really passionate about it, and I think that came through in what we did. And I'm in the environmental club at Bend High, and one thing I want to look at this year, and I've been talking to the environmental center about, is looking at composting and maybe silverware at my high school. And so I think finding ways that you can make a difference on a small scale and involve the people around you is really important and can be really impactful.
I haven't worked a lot with just, projects or have a huge interest in a career in environmentalism at all, but growing up, my parents always, just showed me to pick up litter anytime you saw it. I was always using reusable water bottles, and it was just the way that I was raised, and I didn't really realize till I was older that that was just my small piece in sustainability, and how some people don't live like that. And I didn't even realize how many people just only drink out of plastic water bottles. I always used to like Hydro Flask. I didn't even know that was a thing. So that's just been my step always in my life, and have grown into that and expanded it. Yeah.
This is a question from one of the registrants. What changes do you think your family or yourself would be willing to make to reduce your carbon footprint? Curveball. Didn't talk about it yesterday.
This is more something I want to do in my household, and I've had little projects before. I got out a piece of art paper and was like, okay, our waste program or our water program. And my dad's made signs before for the garage that says, turn off your lights from maintenance or whatnot. So that happens a lot at my house. One thing I would like to look at in my household is our waste, because I notice we have a lot of things going in our garbage, and we have a lot in our recycling, but I think we could improve on our consumerism and where we're shopping and what we're buying, and becoming more informed about those products. I'm big on, plastic waste and single-use plastic, so I think that's something I would like to look at more in my family. And then also, I would like to learn more about where my energy comes from, and when I'm using electricity in my house, is that coming from a renewable resource or non-renewable resource, and how could I change that? So I think that could be another thing I'd like to look at as far as energy and electricity goes.
Very similar to that, just in our household, I would like to look at how we could change waste, plastic waste, but also just food waste. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't think about, is just how much you are consuming and how much you're wasting, and also where you're getting your food from. I think me as the person in the future, and as my household, my family, to make more ethical and and more critical decisions about our food consumption and where it's coming from.
And then as for me, also waste, but a different avenue of that. I had the very eye-opening experience very recently within the last 2 years of learning about America's recycling program and how far we need to go. If you don't know about it, I would highly recommend you research where your recycling actually goes. And so I think my family could do a little bit of a better job, one, choosing things that are actually recyclable to buy, and two, making sure our recycling isn't cross-contaminating so that it doesn't wind up in the landfill anyway.
Yeah, that's great. Just as a reminder to our viewers, if you have questions, in about 5 minutes we'll take a look at those. So submit those in the comment bar if you haven't already. How do you see a positive change? What are you optimistic about in regards to our hopefully more sustainable future, and or how are those changes, what changes do you hope to see looking forward?
We've touched on this, but as time moves on, our technology and our science just keeps getting better. We're just going to learn more about what's affecting climate and how we can change it. And I think in the future that's just going to get better and we're going to learn more. I also think in our generation, we have such a collective mindset, and we have shown in the last few years just how much we care about justice and social justice and environmental justice. And I think a big part of changing the way we do things is that we need to move as a collective, because more people are going to make more of a difference. So I'm just hopeful that we can continue our move as a collective to see change and keep that passion that we have.
Kind of in the same regard, I'm optimistic about the passion that this generation has, and I'm optimistic about how this generation can inspire other generations. I think that we've kind of changed the social norm of climate change, and we've made it something that we talk about every day, and we've made it something that we're asking other people to talk about and demanding that it is talked about. And I think that there's a lot of courage in this generation, and I think we've kind of changed the baseline about how these issues are discussed. And I think that passion, that courage, and that drive is going to be really important in the change that happens that will change our future.
That's going to be a hard one to top. I love courage. Anyway, I am most optimistic about changing where our energy comes from. If we shift to a more alternative methods of creation for energy, we have a huge shot at fixing this thing. And I feel like we can do that. Not only are there really incredible new technologies coming out, but the rate that technology has been changing over the past couple of decades is astronomical, and I think it will continue at that trajectory. We are going to see some really cool innovations coming out over the next few years. I strongly believe that. And I feel like we're going to have a chance to do some really awesome change.
Great. Okay, so we're going to move into some viewer questions. So thanks for sending those in. So first off, at top of the queue, what challenges and advantages do you experience as a youth climate activist? What do you want the rest of the community to know?
People do not take you seriously. And that I can tell that was already what was on our mind. But I think a lot of the times, people just don't take youth seriously about these topics, and they think it's something that just needs to be handled by older people. But the thing is that older people aren't handling it. So here we are trying to fix it. And that's really the biggest issue that I've faced.
Yeah, going off of that, people don't take us seriously because I don't think they understand the mindset that we have. We are incredibly malleable right now. I feel like all of our pre-existing ideas and thoughts about things are in sway, and that we will be able to, because of that, tackle this challenge with new innovative ideas. Like, let's get some diverse, different perspectives in there, not just through demographics like gender and race, but through age. Like, let's do it. This panel is an excellent start. And we really appreciate that opportunity to be given that spotlight. So I just encourage you, if you know anyone who is interested and who is young, I would encourage you to have a conversation with them and see if your mind is blown. I think it would be.
Once again, what Harper said, thank you to the Environmental Center. I know we're all very excited about having this opportunity, and this is kind of the first opportunity we've had like this, which is really exciting. I think one of the challenges that I've faced, and we've kind of talked about this, is just that difference in mindset in the generations. I've kind of had that with composting and silver. We're at Bend High, and the people working in the building. It's hard to understand how we feel about this issue, because we see it very differently and we feel that it's very urgent, and I think we're willing to sacrifice a lot more to obtain these goals around sustainability. And so I think that difference in mindset and kind of social norm and opinion can be difficult, branching that, because as you can see, we're very passionate about this, and I think that's different for every generation. So I think making sure, kind of like Harper said, that we're all communicating about this and sharing openly is an important part to kind of go across that bridge of generations.
This individual loves hearing that y'all are interested in careers or activism in sustainability. They'd like to know specifically, what does a career in sustainability mean to you, or what might that mean to you at this point?
Yeah, so right now, if I didn't mention before, I'm taking a gap year due to the state of the world, and I have decided recently that I would like to pursue a major in sustainability, particularly, and on the pre-law track, because I really want to tackle this social element of this. Like I said before, all three of these pillars, the economic, the social, and the environmental, it's all intertwined. So you really cannot attack one without attacking the others. So for me, that looks like addressing every single issue in that change, and I think a career in law is the best way to do that.
I'm going to label myself undecided. I would also like to pursue some form of environmental science or environmental studies when I graduate high school. Growing up, I've always loved the ocean, so part of me is split towards more of a field idea and looking at marine biology and the impacts I can make there. But at the same time, I'm really interested in legislation, kind of like Harper is, and what I can do in that realm. So I don't know yet, but I know I'm interested in changing things for the environment and for the people that live in this environment.
That's way more than me, because I'm going towards art therapy, so totally out of left field. But I think lifelong learning never stops, right? And I think learning about sustainability is never going to stop for me, and I think working towards change and a difference is never going to stop, so it'll always be part of my life.
Yeah, and I'll just say that art is an important aspect of communicating some of these ideas so that people are inspired and feel drawn to that. So that's very, I think, applicable. This individual would like to know what you think Ben Lapine School should do to be a sustainable leader in our state and nation.
One thing that I think we've already discussed was that we have science classes that cover sustainability, and we have classes based on sustainability, but I've heard Harper say this before, is finding ways that we can mix that into the other classes. I typically feel like at school, there's the main school priorities, and then sustainability is a separate issue, but I think it's important to see the connection and say, okay, we're having this event, how can we make this event more sustainable? We're gonna start this program, how can we make this program more sustainable? So I think it's important to consider sustainability in every aspect of what we're doing at school, and I don't think those things should be separate. I think we should find a way to connect those and then make the things that we need to do at school and want to do at school more sustainable.
Yes, and like I mentioned before, education, it's huge. So why we should be moving our sustainability classes and our environmental science classes to the forefront. They should not be electives. They should be really honored classes that everyone needs to take so that they understand the social and economic and environmental issues and impacts that are happening not only to our world, but to their own lives and how they can deal with that. And then not only that, but adding, like Olive said, interdisciplinary subjects to that so that there's more to pursue. Have electives that if you are really interested in this, you can go forward. I was lucky enough to be able to take classes at CUCC to really pinpoint that sustainability, not just environmental science, is the career I want to go into. So having those opportunities accessible to everyone is really just going to be key, and I urge Ben Lapine schools to see what they can do about that.
I did not go to school here, and I have not, so I can't really speak on this, but I just want to say, like, the school that I did go to didn't have any kind of environmental classes close to what Ben Lapine schools have. So school districts and local levels are places that we can see change and we can make significant change. And it's a lot more accessible than trying to make corporate change like that. So there's definitely things that if you have something you're passionate about and you want to see in the schools, talk to your school boards, talk to your school districts, and see what change can be made.
We've talked about the gap in education and science between generations around these environmental issues, and I feel that the adults working in the district deserve the opportunity to learn about sustainability, because there's no way that you can educate your students and help them be more sustainable at school if you don't understand it yourself. And I think that because those adults didn't get that opportunity when they were kids like us, we should find a way to give them that opportunity now, because I think if they can become educated and then better understand, they can help us better understand, and then we can work better together. So I think we have a responsibility to give that opportunity to our staff members in the Bend Lapine district and everyone working with schools and students, because then we're all better informed and kind of on the same basis about what sustainability means to us.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but this viewer would like to know, what do you see as the biggest policy or legislative change that you would want political leaders to make?
That is a very tough question. I think for me, going back to what I was saying about the energy and how much potential we have, giving a chance to new technologies to try to give them a chance to make this change. Like, we can't keep using coal. It's obvious. It's not a sustainable option for a future, no matter how much money we're making right now. So let's take the money out of politics and actually get something done by using clean and renewable energies and trying to push that into underprivileged communities.
I think going off what Harper said, a lot of the times what I see when we want to fix environmental problems is like picking up the trash, or taking the trash out of the oceans, which is super important, but also more trash is just going to go back in on the other side. And with that technology point, I think we need to be talking about ways that we can prevent these things from happening. And prevention is huge and the only way we're going to stop a lot of this. So I think if we're putting more money into prevention and not into just fixing, because a lot of times fixing is just kind of a show and not doing a lot of sustainable change.
This is general and not a specific law or regulation, but I think making sustainability a priority is where we start, and kind of what they both mentioned, putting funding into that. And I think we need to look at the different global issues and consider sustainability among them. And I think that we need to understand how urgent this issue is, and then from there we can prioritize that issue and put funding towards this issue and put energy and effort towards this issue, and that's how change will happen.
Yeah, and a really quick thought to tack on to the end of that. We need to recognize that a lot of the solutions that are being given to us right now are really superficial. They are just scratching the surface and aren't actually changing our way of life. They are only trying to let us continue to live the way we are and fix our past mistakes. We need to be dealing with the base problem and actually change the way we're living and our mindset.
We've got about 5-6 minutes left. This last question, this person, nameless viewer, asks, there's plenty of divisiveness in our current political environment and plenty of misinformation. How will your generation deal with this? Is there hope?
We have to have hope. We absolutely have to have hope, or we have no fighting chance to fix our past mistakes and prevent mistakes in the future. I think this ties back to education, and I think this ties back to looking at the science and what our leaders in science are telling us. And I think with that, it's important to consider everyone's perspective. And not face it as one group versus the other, but how we can learn together and how we can create solutions together. So I think it's about education and collaboration.
Yeah, I think a big point in misinformation is that the information is still coming in. There are hard facts, but we're still learning more and more every day. So I think if the more people that get involved, the more that they're just going to be actively learning and not just taking what they're seeing at face value. They're going to want to dive into it, learn more about it, and yeah, hope is a big thing. The more that we stay active and passionate about it, the bigger changes we're going to see.
And then to deal with your divisiveness point, we really need to be getting a more diverse perspective on all of these issues. And by doing that, we're going to have an extreme environmentalist and an extreme non-environmentalist and every single person in the center, so that you will always be able to relate to someone else who's talking in the room. And that's going to be really huge if we were going to try to tackle any of these problems. If we just need people who can work across partisan and ideological lines, and diversity is really going to be the way that we fix that.
Great. Well, thank you again to all three of you for contributing and participating, and just want to give you, with the few minutes we have left, a chance to communicate one last thing that you would really like to drive home to our viewers out there.
I have mentioned this before. Climate change is an emergency, and we are not talking about effects in the future or solutions in the future. We are seeing the effects now, and we need to start looking for solutions now. And I would encourage all of you to start considering this and think about what we are looking at as a timeline and what needs to happen in that time to make the change so that we can protect our future generations. So I think it's very important to consider that this and these environmental issues are emergencies. And I also think it's important to consider the intersection of social justice and racial justice, and how this issue is a complex issue and not just about the earth and nature, but about how it affects people and our economy. And I think we need to consider the different aspects of sustainability and how we can attack each of those aspects to find the best solution for everyone.
The biggest thing I would just like for viewers to take home is that any step, even the smallest step, is a huge step in our collective goal of sustainability. And I think a lot of people are afraid of taking those steps and getting involved because they feel like they're too old or out of touch. Just any step, you are joining the collective and you are taking an active part in our collective goal. The only way we're going to reach our end goal is working together, and the fact that you are even remotely interested means that you're just going to start making those subconscious choices to better yourself and each other.
And my point I'd like to drive home is really at the key of this panel, and that is ageism. As I've been talking about, diversity is key if we're going to be doing anything. And we need to recognize that differences are not negative, they are necessary. And they are necessary to each of us to change our own perspective towards the better of the collective. So give younger people the chance to speak. Even if we don't have as much experience as everyone else does, we have an immense amount of potential and a completely different viewpoint than anyone else does as a generation, and that needs to be honored.
All right, wonderful responses from all of you, and we are going to break for intermission. Thank you again to all of our commenters, both before the event and during our live stream video chat. So yeah, let's break for intermission.
All right, and for those of you on the live stream, we're taking a quick intermission. We should start right at 6:05 or a little bit earlier. So grab a drink and some popcorn, and we'll get the awards started right around 6:05.
Welcome back, everybody, to the 2021 Sustainability Awards. Again, I'm Mike Riley, Executive Director at the Environmental Center, and we are now going to move on after that fantastic panel of youth to actually giving out the awards to this year's awards winners. A little bit about the awards and the awards process before we get started on that. How we sort of make decisions and the criteria that we're thinking about with the awards. We solicited nominations and applications from the community, inviting individuals and organizations, whether they're public or private, to participate. We received 11 nominations this year, and we had a community selection committee help us choose the final winners. This year, we radically simplified the nomination and application process and the criteria, and really just stepped back and had people focus on how they contribute to the 3 core pillars of sustainability: a healthy environment, social equity, and a vibrant economy. We also looked at leadership, because forward progress is not possible without individuals who push the envelope and set good examples for others to follow. So we asked 2 key questions of all the applications. How has the business or the organization's leadership, what have they done to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability? And then second, what have they done to set example or push their industry or the rest of the community towards a sustainable future? So the selection committee that we had played an important role, as I said, in helping us review the applications and determine the winners. They consisted of 2 environmental staff members, myself and Priscilla Calleros, 2 former winners of sustainability awards, some educators, students, and community leaders. So the members of the committee included Eduardo Romero from Vámonos Outside, Henry Abel from Pine Mountain Sports, who is also a former winner, Carrie Ecker from Cascade Financial Strategies, Christy Walker, who is Central Oregon Community College's Director of Diversity and Inclusion, and Matt Schinderman. Matt is a professor at OSU Cascades and director of their Human and Ecosystem Resilience and Sustainability Lab. Matt also facilitated the involvement of some of his students at OSU Cascades that are being trained in sustainability assessment. And so as part of a class, they participated in a review and some recommendations on scoring on some of the applications. Matt also is a former winner of a sustainability award. The other thing I just wanted to share with you is that each year when we do this, we actually create a unique set of awards to give out. So no awards are alike. Every year they're unique and there's something different. This is the beginning. We're going to show you the whole award when we give them out. But this year's awards were created by a local artist and maker named Timothy Burnett. Timothy's traditional education in exercise sciences led him to attain his PhD in human bioenergetics and his current position as a senior instructor of kinesiology and the program lead in kinesiology at OSU Cascades. His passion for making has embroiled him in the local maker community in Bend. He lovingly has been nicknamed the Doctor by the maker community, and he loves to teach others how to make and build things. Timothy's love of making has developed into a side business, Doc of All Trades, and he currently serves as the president of the High Desert Makers. In his spare time, Tim likes to make almost anything: artisan tools, wood furniture, leather apparel, clocks, functional artistic objects, jewelry, and much, much more. These are the awards here, as I said, and what's really exciting about them is that each award reflects a different species of wood and it's wood salvaged from Oregon wildfires. And as we all know, wildfires have become a bigger part of our story and are likely to be that way into the future. One of the awards is made with dark Claro walnut from the Willamette Valley, which contains ripples of dark reds and browns. Another is fiery redwood from southern Oregon that shows intricate burl eyes that reflect light in a holographic undertone. And third is a myrtle burl from the Oregon coast, which highlights the rich swirls of the wood itself and the intricate patterning of boring beetles from long ago. So I am going to turn it over now to the first presenter. We have 3 members of our awards committee are actually going to present the awards tonight, and the first one is going to be presented by Carrie Ecker.
Hello. The first award tonight goes to Well Rooted Farms. Well-Rooted Farms is a family-owned business owned here locally in Tumalo that grows local food for our community of Central Oregon. They grow organic vegetables, pasture-raised eggs, and meat. They use practices that contribute to having the most nutritious food we could eat, including regenerative agriculture, no-till planting, and organic practices. They have a U-Pick vegetable garden located in Tumalo that allows people to harvest their own vegetables. They also have a solar-powered veggie shed by Ridgeview High School, which they stock daily with the produce they grow. They are demonstrating leadership, and they're having an impact and a ripple effect in our larger community that's bigger than themselves. They're engaging a business model that allows community to connect to food. Their work is commendable, as farming is so difficult in this region and requires so much work. Please join me in congratulating Frank Miracle of Well-Rooted Farms.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the Environmental Center for inviting me here. I'm going to set this down. And I also want to thank all the consumers in our community that has went out of their way to support our mission of supplying locally grown sustainable produce. And it's humbling to see the response from the community, and we really appreciate that. Access to healthy food, we feel, is one of the most important building blocks to our society, and we have spent the last 2 years developing ways to get our produce to the community. Our first year, which was 2 years ago, we started a U-Pick, and it was an experiment. We wanted to invite the community out to our farm and be able to enjoy the ambiance of the farm and the beautiful flowers, the environment there, and then also leave with abundance of produce. But we realized that method was limiting. We couldn't really get our produce out to the community like we wanted to. And so we had another great experiment. We designed and built a produce shed. We call it the produce shed, and it's just it's a solar-powered building, and we can put them anywhere, really anywhere in the country. And we're really thankful for the response. You know, we didn't know what to expect. You know, it's honor system. People can access food whenever they want, and there's no policing. There's no one managing it. But we just relied on the honesty of our community and the integrity of the community to support us and allow us to provide, you know, economical yet the highest quality food that, you know, that we think is possible. And so we're really thankful for that. And we heard from the youth panel tonight about how sustainable local products should be accessible to everyone and not just the wealthy population. And that's been a goal of ours. And it's challenging growing produce here in this environment, and it's even more challenging getting it out to the community. And it's going to take a radical change in the food system in order to do that, and we're really excited to take that on. And so just to summarize, we're really thankful for this opportunity tonight and the support that we've gotten from the community. It's been amazing. It's changed our life, and we just want to just continue our mission of providing local food. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christy Walker. My pronouns are she, her, and Aya, and I am the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for Central Oregon Community College. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the youth panel. That was amazing, really inspiring, and just filled me with a lot of hope, and I just couldn't help it to repeat that, so thank you. I'm really honored to be a part of this, this process, and I'm really excited to be giving the next award to Core Community Land Trust. The Core Community Land Trust is a nonprofit that creates sustainable, affordable home ownership communities for Central Oregon's workforce. They are providing a critical need and doing it sustainably. The Community Land Trust model enables families who have previously been excluded from home ownership, which historically include communities that have been marginalized, the opportunity to purchase a home at an affordable price, build equity and generational wealth. Core Community Land Trust is a leader by addressing two challenges with one solution: providing affordable housing and rallying the community to support goal net zero housing. Both the sustainability and craftsmanship of Core communities are unmatched in the industry. Core homes are designed to net zero energy standards and feature solar panels, a tightly sealed building envelope, upgraded fixtures, hard surface flooring, and energy-efficient lighting and mechanicals. Based in Bend, Core uses the Community Land Trust model to ensure that the community will have access to healthy, affordable homes for generations to come. Please join me in congratulating Core Community Land Trust. And to receive the award is Amy Warren.
Hi, I'm Amy Warren, Core's co-founder, and I have been coveting one of these awards for well over 10 years now, so it's pretty exciting to be up here. Fast forward just a little bit, in 2014 when we founded Core, I got reached out to from Mike Riley, and he wanted to have lunch, and I just thought he wanted to kind of hear out what we were doing, and after we met, he said, hey, the Environmental Center would like to partner with Core as your fiscal sponsor until you get your nonprofit status. It took us a whole year to get nonprofit status, and generally you can't accept donations during that time. But because of the Environmental Center's partnership, we were able to get some donations and some money in our bank to get off the ground before we received that status. Fast forward again to 2021, and this year we put our first 5 households into homes, net zero energy homes, and this month we'll be breaking ground on our next 5 net zero energy homes, which is pretty exciting. Core was formed to provide not only environmentally friendly but affordable homeownership opportunities to those who contribute to the fabric of the area, community, and economy. Often that's our workforce, folks who live and work here but can't afford to buy a home. So this is something we're going to keep doing. We're going to keep building these net zero energy homes, and we hope to set an example for the rest of Oregon, the Northwest, and the country, because if everyone were building homes to net zero, as our population grows, we wouldn't need more power generation if we had homes that generated power on their own. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Henry Abel. I work for Pine Mountain Sports. Pine Mountain Sports is a past winner as we received the Sustainability Award in 2016. It gives me great pleasure to be able to present this next award, especially because this next organization advocates for things that are close to my bicycle riding heart. I'm talking about Bend Bikes. Bend Bikes is unique among this year's nominations, as Bend Bikes is a 100% volunteer-driven organization. They engage with bicycle riders and bicycle commuters here in Bend, and they advocate on behalf of the cycling families and individuals in Bend who travel by bike. They advocate with our city leaders, staff, and other key decision makers on our behalf. Bend Bikes believes that our community requires strong leadership that understands a few of the following things. One, that inclusive, sustainable, and equitable transportation planning for our community requires all people to feel safe biking to school, to work, to the grocery store, and across town. Two, that We should prioritize protecting the most vulnerable road users like children who ride bikes. And 3, that reducing traffic benefits everyone and helps everybody in our community and keeps them safer. Bend Bikes initiated a protected bike lane demonstration, which became a permanent thing here in Bend. They've demonstrated a neighborhood greenway and collaborated to demonstrate the first 2-way protected bike lane in Bend. They've rallied testimony to Bend City Council meetings and organized a successful petition drive, securing $1 million in funding for neighborhood greenways. So this latest Greenways initiative is a first for Bend. Their mission is to advocate for Bend as a complete city, looking out for all road users, big and small, to ensure that people from all communities and abilities feel safe biking around Bend. Thank you. Currently, they are working to help guide the city in the implementation of the transportation bond to prioritize the needs of people who walk, bike, and roll. I think we can agree that the name of their organization pretty much says it all. Please join me in congratulating Leanne and Elisa of Bend Bikes.
Hello, my name is Elisa Chang. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the board secretary of Bend Bikes. I just wanted to say thank you very much for this award. Transportation is such a big part of greenhouse gas emissions and equitable communities. I'm proud to work with Bend Bikes in creating opportunities for alternative modes of transportation for a more equitable and sustainable future.
Hi, my name is Leanne O'Neill. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I am the board president of Bend Bikes, and I have so much gratitude for receiving this award, and it's particularly meaningful for us this year. As an all-volunteer organization, we have no paid staff, so this is a labor of love and survival. And we are also a woman of color-led organization for the first time in Bend Bikes history. And we're really trying to change the dialogue around who the face of bike advocacy is, who the face of sustainability is. And so it really means a lot to be recognized this year. We're really leading currently community conversations and advocacy around implementation of the transportation bond projects, project design, challenging city staff to make sure that they're following best practices. We're seeing this, some great success with the Wilson Corridor, which was the first bond project approved by the Transportation Bond Oversight Committee, where we're going to probably be getting our first protected bike lane along a major corridor and a protected intersection, a first for this community. We're also really looking to make sure that we're shifting resources because there's been a historic disinvestment in infrastructure for people who walk, bike, and roll. At the state level, we are the only voice of people who bike on the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development's Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities Rule Advisory Committee, and have been really guiding a lot of the thought processes on performance measures for cycling infrastructure. So what else are we up to these days? Well, keep an eye out. We're, fingers crossed, I'm going to be delivering hopefully a Christmas present to the community, which will be Bend's first bike map. And yeah, thanks.
Okay, so how about one more round of applause here in the room, but also at home. You can applaud, please. So I just want to do a final thank you to everybody for being with us tonight. A final thank you to our sponsors, especially Strictly Organic Coffee Company, Cascade Financial Strategies, and OSU Cascades. Thanks to Timothy Burnett, the doc of all trades, for designing this year's really cool awards. And a really big thank you to all our nominees and winners for their hard work to create a sustainable future for people and the planet. And how about those youth climate activists? Way to go. I hope these awards and stories that you've heard tonight leave you inspired to go out and do your part to make sustainability real in your life, at home, at work, and in our community. A recording of this celebration will be available on the Environmental Center's YouTube page, so please share it widely, and via our Facebook page you'll be able to share that post as well. You can learn a lot more about this year's winners at envirocenter.org. Thanks again for joining us, everybody, and have a great rest of your evening.